Hi, and welcome back to Pay Down Debt Solutions, or welcome to Pay Down Debt Solutions if you are new to us. My name is Jen, and sometimes you get Dan. He is my husband and my counterpart, and we created Pay Down Debt Solutions for you, for all of those out there who find themselves payment poor, who find themselves strapped, living from paycheck to paycheck, and want a way out of your debt. We created this for you because we were, of course, just like you. So Dan and I are business owners. And prior to being business owners, I myself was a branch manager and a banker. So I understand the traditional banking system and the traditional banking products. And we are going to show you how to flip that on its head and show you guys the right way to use the tools at the bank. So what Paydown offers is a 3-step simple solution to all of your banking needs. It is 3 steps. Number 1 is to organize all your debts, organize all of your income and all of your expenses. And you're then going to identify your debt tool, your debt weapon, which are revolving lines of credit. Okay. Always align, never alone. And we are going to get into that today for you. Then step number 3 is to implement the plan that we show you how to build. Now, I'm going to work more off of the student scenario that I did the other day with students who found themselves pretty tight and had a lot going on. As you can see, they have a lot of debts going on. We're going to talk about, we showed them, number 1, when we talk to you guys about a strategy and a plan. And if you come to us and you want a coaching session, and remember, it's one coaching session, and that usually we're going to set you on a plan, and that's usually all you need to get yourself out of your financial troubles, okay? And you can, just so you know, you can reach us at info@paydowndebtsolutions.com. Send us an email. We'll send you worksheets and we can help you through this. But when you set your plan, okay, and just like when we set a plan for you, the first thing you're going to do is work with the finances that you have in front of you. And that is what we did for these students here. And then we set another plan for them using lines of credit such as a personal line of credit or a home equity line of credit or a business line of credit, okay? And so these guys have a bunch of different things going on. They also have a side business, a side hustle that they run, okay? So what made a lot of sense for them was, number 1, to look at what they had in case they couldn't get, any other tools out there. Then we took those tools and we decided, okay, if you can then go to the next level, what is that going to look like? And so today we're going to discuss the home equity lines of credit, the first lien position, the second lien position. And so we're going to get into that a little bit more so we can explain further what those are and how those can change your situation, okay? But the number 1 thing that I want to talk to you today is, are you serious? Are you serious about getting out of debt, right? Because we don't teach frugality here. That is not something we teach. There is another guru out there that teaches plenty of frugality, and we don't teach frugality because there is one life, right? YOLO. You only have one life to live. This is it. So I want you guys to enjoy what you have, enjoy the things that you like. Just don't go crazy, right? It's going crazy that can get you in some situations that you don't want to be in. But again, life happens, right? So life happens to you. Maybe you've had a divorce, maybe somebody's lost a job, maybe you had a sick parent or a sick child you were trying to take care of, and you found yourself in a world of hurt. And maybe you're even looking at these debt repayment programs that are out there, which I am going to advocate that you do not do, okay? And I have plenty of personal experience with this, with friends of ours. And of course, I have personal experience with velocity banking, which is what I'm teaching you guys to do today. You can do this. You can get yourself out of whatever situation you're in without going to a debt repayment program, without going into a bankruptcy, and without modifying your loans, because that is another pitfall people find themselves in, okay? So let's get into this for a second here. Do you want to be out of debt? Do you? You need to really ask yourself that, because there's a couple things that go along with that we need to discuss, okay? And number 1 being how you spend your money, all right? How do you spend your money? Again, I don't teach frugality, but you need to be within reason, okay? Stop keeping up with the Joneses if you're trying to. Don't do that, okay? The Joneses have their own problems they're not telling you about. Trust me, I know this. I see it every day, okay? So how seriously you take being in debt makes a difference in your pay down plan outcome, okay? So I can give you a solution all day long. Dan can give you a solution all day long. We can do this all day long for you. But if you continue, okay, or start to do things, incorrectly, right? So if you start spending loads of money that you shouldn't spend, or if you don't make small changes, okay, or if you don't keep to what you're doing, that's going to find you in a world of hurt. So what you should do is don't do anything different perhaps than what you're doing right now unless you know you need to. Now you have to, take that with a grain of salt, right? Because there's plenty of people out there that know they need to make changes. So then make some changes, okay? But that doesn't mean you have to pinch every little penny. That doesn't mean that. I want you to enjoy your life. I do. Okay? So, if you put in the work, and you can put in the work and still get relief from your debt payments. So, what exactly does that mean? So, how do you put in the work? How do you run a plan? Okay, how do you organize a plan for yourself and still put in the work? What exactly do I mean? Well, what I mean is stick to the plan you make for your finances. Okay, so stick to it. So, we know that deviations are going to happen and that's okay, right? So, if we give you a plan or you create a plan for yourself, and you're looking at your plan and you say, okay, but I really, really, really want this car that I'm going to go get a loan for. You've just set yourself back, right? You perhaps you have. Now, there's a difference between wanting a car and needing a car, right? If you need a car, maybe you buy one that's not right off the lot, brand new. Maybe you buy one that's a little bit older, that you can save some money on, that you can maybe use a line of credit to purchase instead, right? So we got to think smart about what we're doing and think smart about those purchases that we're making, all right? Maybe you have to, you deviate from your plan because something happens to your car and you need to get it repaired, or you need new tires, or you have a kid that needs braces, right? So all of these little things happen in life, and we know that. And we try to build that in and understand that whatever plan you have in front of you is based on the numbers that you have that you're averaging now. So it could be a little bit higher or a little bit lower, even depending on what you have going on or what happens along the way. All right. Now, also, what does this mean? You need to create a reasonable budget and stick to it, okay? Reasonable. What is reasonable? Reasonable is probably what you're doing today, okay? You can probably do what you're doing today, not make too many changes or any at all, and still get yourself out of debt faster than you would with traditional banking, all right? So, what does that mean? Well, here's an example. And it is very simple, you guys. This is pretty simple. And this is actually how Dan and I run everything on a daily basis. Okay. So, what amount do you want to stick to monthly? So, kind of come up with that monthly plan. So, when you get our sheets, for example, or you write down your own expenses, you're going to see what you spend on living expenses every month. Okay. That's groceries, that's gas, that's some utilities in there. Okay. Maybe some extra fun money. Maybe you give yourself some fun money, and that's your fun money that you spend in a month, okay, in a month's worth of time. So if you take that, and let's take an example of $200 monthly. Okay, so I'm sorry, $2,000 monthly. Oh my gosh, do you ever do this? Do you ever tell your spouse, you just said blah blah blah, and they go, I did not. I said blah blah blah, right? Dan and I do this all the time, and I have learned from watching my videos, holy shiznit, he's right. There are things I say, I'm totally adamant that I say something else, and I didn't. I said what I thought I said wasn't right. So I just had to make that example here because we do this literally all the time. And I'll go to tell Dan, I was like, you said blah blah blah, and he said I did not. I said something else. Anyway, I think it's really funny. So just know, you guys, what you think you say is probably not always what you thought you said. Okay. And for argument's sake, just know that. Anyway, so $2,000 monthly, right? So if you know that you have $2,000 in living expenses monthly, and you have to spend, that means you have to spend $500 a week, or you have $500 a week to spend. Let's put it that way. So every weekend, so if you're going to start during the week, right, in the beginning of the week, so at the end of the weekend, which is a good time to do it because hopefully you have less going on, you don't have work and kids to shuffle around and places to be and things to do, right? So maybe at every weekend, check your running balance, check where you're at for the week, right? So if you're halfway through the month and you've spent $1,500, shoot, you got to scale back, right? You got to buy less because you only then have $500 left for 2 weeks. So that could be tight. Or you might look at, the midway point and go, okay, hey, I've only spent $1,800 and I had up to, I'm sorry, not 1,800. I only spent 800 and I had up to 1,000 to spend. So I actually have 200 bucks more that I can do something with. So look at your finances that way. That is one really simple way to kind of keep track of things. And here is my favorite tip. You guys, use a credit card. So put all of your expenses on a credit card, no matter what revolving line system you're using. Usually, though, if you're using a home equity line or a personal line of credit, you still can use your credit card for all of your living expenses. And then you're just paying that credit card off monthly, right? With your income, your check that you're getting. All right. So that's just an easy way because you can very simply go in and see what you're spending your money on and know where you need to curtail things, right? Okay. So it's pretty easy to track your spend when you look at it that way. Now, let's talk for a second about, like I said earlier in the video, the first liens versus the second liens when we're talking about home equity lines. Now, why do we choose to use home equity lines of credit as opposed to using just credit cards to Velocity Bank? Well, the reason is when you use a line of credit, such as a home equity line of credit or a personal line of credit or even a business line of credit, you can run all of your expenses through that line of credit because those lines of credit are connected to your checking account. And if you're using a debit card to make purchases or using a debit card to pay for your utilities or using that checking account itself to draft your utilities from or your phone bill or whatever, right? If you're doing it that way, then the money comes from that line of credit, moves right into the checking account and pays all those bills for you or those living expenses, all right? You can use every dollar of your income then to put onto that line of credit, which means you drop your average daily balance for that debt, right? And you continue to win through Velocity Banking because it is that average daily balance that makes you win, that allows you to win, I should say more appropriately. Because when you use lines of credit and credit cards included in this, your bank is figuring it on an average daily balance. So if your average is, let's say, if the beginning of the month you're at $80,000 for a line of credit of some sort, and at the end, and your income comes in, let's say it's $10,000, and you drop it to $70,000, your interest is going to be impacted by that big drop in that balance because then it's going to be averaged. We know that you're going to be spending money, okay, out of that line of credit to pay for your other expenses. We know this. But again, it's that average daily balance that they're calculating it on, which is totally different than an amortized schedule such as your mortgage or your auto payment or your other loan payments out there. They're all front end loaded with interest, which means your payment is the same every month, but your interest is high in the beginning of that loan and it creeps down. Where your balance then, only a tiny little bit of that money that you're paying monthly is going to the balance. You're paying much more in interest, which is why the lines of credit work well and work with Velocity Banking, okay? So let's get back to the first lien. Sorry, tangent there, but I wanted to make sure you understood why we're using the lines of credit, okay? Now, when we talk about first lien versus second lien, I am specifically talking about a line of credit, a first lien line of credit and a second lien line of credit. The names are HELOC and first lien HELOC, okay? HELOC standing for Home Equity Line of Credit, line over loan always, okay? So first lien, this lien is in the first debt position. So this is the first debt to be satisfied in a foreclosure, okay? So a first lien home equity would be then you have no mortgage, or that mortgage was absorbed by that first lien and taken over, bought out in a sense, bought out, right? By that first lien position, which in our case here for Velocity Banking is on a revolving line of credit, right? First a line so that you can put money in and take money out as needed, okay? That would be the first lien. Now, second lien, this lien is the second or next debt to be paid in a foreclosure, okay? So it's slightly more risk, so the rate is typically higher. Now, first lien home equities versus second lien home equities. Your first lien home equity, first lien position, your rates are going to be lower. They're going to be closer to prime, to the prime rate, okay? Second lien position, it is again in the second lien position, meaning whatever is in the first lien position, be it usually your mortgage, right? then that is subordinated, right? It's subordinated to that mortgage, which means that it's going to be the second lien position HELOC is going to be a little bit more expensive rate wise versus your first lien, okay? But it doesn't matter, and I'm going to show you why in this example, okay? Now, then let's talk a little bit, because this is very relevant to this student scenario. I want to talk to you guys about rate modifications or loan modifications. So modifications were extremely big going in 2008, right? When we had our mortgage crisis going on, where our home values fell and we had all these mortgages that were upside down. And so people were really strapped. There were things going on in our environment, and we just were having trouble making payments, right? Or many of you were having trouble making payments. And guess what? We did too, because in 2008, we stupidly modified our mortgage, okay? And I'm not calling you guys stupid. I'm saying stupidly being, we don't know what we don't know. And I didn't know the impact of this on myself at the time, okay? Nor did Dan until much later, like now, right? So I want to talk to you guys about modifications. So the rate or loan modification, it is a change to your mortgage term or rate, or both, okay? And why does this happen? Well, usually it's for a hardship, okay? We know in 2008 there was hardships, okay? A hardship, again, could be you lose your job. It could be you can't go to your job because you're taking care of a sick parent or a sick child, or I don't know, what are other hardships out there? Lose your job, you get another job and you don't, and it's not quite the same money that you had before, right? So maybe your income is lower for some reason, okay? So there's a hardship going on, all right? And so what happens is the modifications will reduce the payments to an affordable level, okay? So this is to help homeowners make payments and remain current and avoid foreclosure. But it does other things to you on the back end, which I'm going to show you in this scenario here, okay, with the student scenario. Now, is this smart or not smart when you modify? Is it? Well, I think I kind of probably tipped you off, right? So you kind of probably already know. But at the time, maybe you have to do it because you were banking traditionally and you didn't know any other way, right? So yes, that did help you. But now that you are smarter, a little bit more educated, right? You aren't ignorant anymore. You know things now. Maybe you're going to do something different, and maybe it's going to be velocity banking through the pay down method, okay? So student scenario recap. Let's recap this real quick for you. We've got an income of $6,300. We've got expenses of $5,300. We have a cash flow of $928. Now I'm bringing the mortgage in because I want to talk to you guys about that mortgage, all right? So they have a mortgage right now. They're sitting at $124,061, and it's around $1,000 payment or so. And their interest rate is a 3.75. Oh my gosh, what a great rate, right? You guys are all saying that. I know you are. Remember, double it at a zero, and that is their effective rate. So what is their effective rate? It is what? 3.75. We're talking 4. We're talking 8. We're talking 8.5. We're talking 80% is their actual effective interest rate. Now, so if we look at these cards and these loans they have going on, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? No, 9, sorry. That's the same thing. It's just saying it's a loan. So we've got 9 of these going on. And you guys, you all know, you're sitting there going, yeah, I have that same thing happening. I have that same thing going on. I have 10 plus lines, loans, whatever out there. Because guess what? We did too, right? We did too as business owners. We did. So you're all sitting here in the same boat, right? These guys have $94,498 in debt payments, not including that mortgage. They have $3,198 in debt payments that they're making, okay? So if they're sitting here with $94,498 at $3,198, now, if you recall from the video the other day, we ran a plan for them strictly on, or Dan ran a plan for them, I should say. I take myself out of that. That is his. He ran a plan for them that dropped them, okay, that dropped them by half, okay? So they were going to spend, traditionally banking, $62,000 in interest payments over the course of all of those loans to term out. We ran a plan, or Dan ran a plan, whereas he got them down to halves. He halved that amount, okay? So $35,000 about was what he got them down to, using nothing but the tools that they currently have, okay? No other loans, no other lines of credit entered into the picture at this point. They were just working down using credit cards, using debt destroyers, rotating those debt destroyers, paying things off on the way. We ran a schedule so we knew what time things were paying off, which again is what you're going to do for yourself. You're first going to run it with what you have, then you're going to run it with the potential. So we ran it with what we had, then we talked about potentials, okay? So for them, seeing as they're in Texas, okay, their scores set at 660 and 640, okay? Decent scores. They're not top line scores, okay? Top line scores are 700 and above, right? But they're still decent and they can still get a home equity line of credit with those scores. So, but in Texas, they can only go up to 80% loan to value for either a first or second lien. It doesn't matter. So Texas only allows that. Plus there's a minimum of 20,000 you have to take out, which again, sometimes that kicks people out of being able to do a home equity line of credit. All right. So these guys also did a loan modification in 2008. They've had their mortgage since 2008. We're not sure when the modification happened, if it was at the same time, it was a few years ago, okay? So whether they got their mortgage and then realized they needed to modify it because they felt strapped at the time, or if it was a few years later that they got the modification, that I'm not really clear on, and they didn't really remember, okay? So in 2008, again, we had all these modifications going on, and let's say we're taking their loan amount, okay, just so I can run a hypothetical for you so you understand what kind of numbers we're looking at here, okay? So if they got a mortgage at 195,000, okay, and now they're down to 124,061. So there's, let's see, 2008 to 18 to 20, let's see, to 18. So they're over 20 years, right? So they've already been in this mortgage over 20 years. Now, think about that. A 30-year fixed, they've been in it over 20 years. Okay. But this modification took them from a 30 years to 40 years. So they tacked on another 10 years to that. So what did that do to this mortgage? What did it do? Well, we all know time is money, right? Time is money in a good way for us, but time is money in a bad way when it comes to loans, because the more time you have on that loan, the more debt you have, right? Or the longer you have the debt, I should say, and the more interest your banks are making, right? They don't need to be any richer than they already are. They do just fine. So let's cut that down. Let's still give them their money and let them get paid, but let's keep our wealth, right? Let's do that. So these guys, they went from 30 to 40 years. This added 10,000 or 10 years, but it added $50,000 to the interest that they were going to pay, right? Or that they are paying. So now they went from 50,000 or 10 years, they added $50,000. And look at, is this smart or not smart? Well, it's probably not smart, but at the time, what other choices did they have? They didn't know about velocity banking. So we give them a breathing room, right? Because guess what? Dan and I did it too. So now that we know what we know, would we do it again? Oh, heck no, we wouldn't. Not by any means. Okay, so if you'll recall, I ran a second lien for them just with their debts here, okay? And the debts totaled the 94,498. Okay, and this was at a 15% interest rate. I ran it high. It's not going to be 15%, but I want you guys to see the power of velocity banking. So you take your average, right? You have your 94,000, your income comes in. And remember, all of the income can come in because it's a line of credit. So all of your income comes in. Drops it to 88,189, okay? And then our expenses, again, we subtract out the 3198 from our total expenses, which gives us the 2174. Those are their expenses monthly now without those charges, okay? Does include their mortgage. Now, we have to find out our interest rate. Well, the interest rate is calculated on this 15% on an average daily balance. Again, the power of the average daily balance. So how do we figure that? We do this. We take your high, your 94,498, you're going to add it to the 88,189. You're going to divide it by 2, okay? So I will quickly do this for you again. So remember, 94498 plus 88,189 equals 182,687. Then I'm going to divide that by 2 to give me 91,343. And then I'm going to multiply that by 0.15, okay, which gives me 13,701. But now I have to divide that by 12, don't I? Because it is 12 months, right? We don't want a year's worth of interest. We want 1 month. So when you divide it by 12, that gives us this number here, which is 1141, okay? And you're going to do that every month, right? Because every month your income's going to come in and continuously drop your balance, which means this should be going down, such as it is, okay? All right, so we get our interest rate here. We know our expenses, they come back in, right? So the 88, 189 stays there for a few minutes, right? Or maybe a couple days, and then you have expenses. So then it brings you back up to 91,513, which is lower than the 94,498 because you're starting the next month off here. And if you're doing your checks, you know you're good because it's lower than this. You bring your income in again, and again, you're repeating the process. Now, if you recall, this took 26 months and they spent $16,243 in interest. They would have paid 62,000 something, okay? 62 or 63,000 is what they would have spent traditionally banking. Dan had gotten them to 35 using the credit cards as a way to Velocity Bank, but using the line of credit, they did even better. They halved it almost again, right? Almost. And so now you're down to 16,243. Now, if they decide they're going to do a first lien home equity, if they can do it and roll all of it together, their mortgage, okay, the 124,061, if they roll this all together and they do it, what does that look like for them? Well, that's what I ran right here for you. And I ran this at a high of 11%. We know that mortgage, that first lien home equity is not going to be 11%. It'll probably be 8.5%, somewhere around there, okay? Based on their credit scores, maybe 9, okay? But let's say 8.5, it would be closer to what they're going to look like, okay? But anyway, so if we ran it at 11 and I added in 3,000 for closing costs, okay? Because there's about 3,000 or 4,000 in the state of Texas for closing costs. You don't see much more than that in your first liens, though, just so you know. You don't see more than that. Your mortgages, on the other hand, over $20,000 for closing costs. Which would you do, right? I mean, think about that. All right. So 221,559 minus the 6,300. Again, we're working it down exactly like I just showed you, calculating your interest exactly like I just showed you. So when you work this down, what does that do and what is the time it takes? Well, let me show you, okay? Let me show you this. Okay, so here are the numbers, and I think they're pretty impactful, okay? Now, we, at 11% interest rate, that it took them 54 months to do, okay? 54 months, remember the mortgage came out of this. So 54 months and 4.5 years, 4.5 years, not 30 years, not 40 years, 4.5 years, okay? $59,752 in interest, okay? Yes, it's more than this, but remember your mortgage is now in it. So think about that, right? So when you see this number and say, but that's more, you got to remember your mortgage is in it. You're still paying your mortgage payment when you're doing this. Your mortgage payment is all now cash flow absorbed into this first lien, okay? Now, that was at 11%. If it was at 8.5%, that means it would be 51 months. Time is money. And it would be $42,472, okay? So that is what it would be, probably closer to what it would be for them. Now, so at 11% interest rate, you're saving $18,000. Now, that's a lot of money, right? $18,000 is a lot of money. But you might be looking at it saying, well, I thought it would be more than that. Well, think about it though. When you have a mortgage, your amortized schedule, you're paying more interest in the first few years, let's say the first 10 years, right? So had they done this, had they learned velocity banking in the first 3 to 5 years, they would have saved a considerable amount more than they did at this later stage, but they're still saving, and that is the point, okay? So at $11,000, they're at $18,000 is their savings. At 8.5%, line of credit, they save $36,000. So that's a big difference between that 11% and the 8.5%. So anyway, so 36 versus 18, but remember this mortgage, they modified it. They've been in it over 20 years. They're still saving. Even after 20 years, doing this is the best thing that they could do. So if they can get it, fantastic. If they can't get a first lien, doesn't matter. They still win doing the second lien. Then they can take the money once that's paid off in 26 months. They can start chunking down on this mortgage, right? And paying it off faster. Time is money. And that is important to you. Now, what I wanted to let you guys know too is if you guys decide ever to enter into a coaching a plan so that we can help you with the velocity banking, and those of you that have already come to us and done it, I now have a coaching group on Facebook. So it's the Pay Down Coaching Group. I will send you guys emails so that you can be added into it. You have to either had a coaching session with us, or when we get our platform out there, if you decide you want the platform, you will also be entered into that coaching group. What is phenomenal about it is we're answering questions for you guys in that group every day. You guys can answer questions for yourselves or for others in that coaching group, which is phenomenal. To be able to do that for your peers is great. And I want this to be a community, you guys. I want you guys all to be a community of velocity bankers, a community of, pay down strategizers, right? Who have learned a different way, who have beat the traditional banking strategy and come out ahead, because I know you can. Have a great day, you guys. I hope that you've learned something today. And if you have any questions, you can always email us or comment below. I read those comments every day, and so does Dan. Have a good one.